They say some nights, the world feels just slightly off. You're walking home, everything familiar, everything safe, and then you notice it. A shadow that shouldn't be there. A face you don't recognize, staring straight at you through the darkness. You try to ignore it, you try to convince yourself it's nothing, but the truth is, sometimes it's already too late. This is what happened to me, in 3 completely separate incidents that I will never forget. This happened many years ago, back when I was 16. I've never been built for camping. Dirt in your teeth, bugs crawling inside your tent, a sleeping bag that somehow manages to feel like a concrete slab. It's torture. And yet, every summer, my dad would insist on dragging me into the woods with him and his equally rugged friends. Disconnecting from technology, reconnecting with nature, they called it. I called it suffering. By my sophomore year, I'd had enough. I begged him to let me bring a friend along, someone who could make it bearable. Surprisingly, he agreed without fuss. That friend was Charles. Charles was the kind of boy who could start a fire with a single match and a dead leaf. He was calm, teasing but not judgmental, and he made me feel like I could survive a night outdoors. At least until things went completely sideways. We set off with the expectation of solitude, silence, and mosquitoes. What we found was the opposite. A glorified campground with paved paths, indoor bathrooms, and even a playground. My dad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Next to it, flashing and buzzing, was a miniature amusement park, complete with carnival games, a Ferris wheel, and a handful of roller coasters. The collision of these two worlds, the wilderness and the neon-lit nightmare, was surreal, almost comedic if it weren't so infuriating. Setting up camp was tense. Charles moved like a seasoned scout, pitching our tent and tying knots while I fumbled, frustrated. When my dad gave him a nod of approval, I wanted to hit something. But that night, as the campfire burned low, Charles suggested something unexpected. We explore the amusement park. I wasn't sure at first. The adults were asleep, the campground was quiet, and the hum of the park lights made everything seem slightly unreal. But Charles's eyes gleamed with mischief, and I had to admit, part of me was intrigued. We slipped out, flashlights in hand. Climbing the fence that separated the campground from the park was easy. Too easy. The place was dark, eerily quiet, except for the occasional hum of a patrolling security guard on a golf cart. We ducked behind buildings, tiptoed across open stretches, and navigated our way toward the tallest roller coaster. Every step felt like a heartbeat in a horror movie. As we approached the coaster, the shadows seemed to move independently. I could feel every hair on my neck stand on end. We made it to the maintenance stairs, metal rungs cold beneath our hands, no railings for some stretches, and a dizzying drop beneath us. I kept my eyes glued to the horizon, every nerve screaming. At the top, the view was breathtaking, almost cinematic. The park stretched below us in chaotic disarray. Blinking lights, silent rides, carnival booths lined in perfect rows. We took a single photo, a poor substitute for the adrenaline flooding my veins. But the thrill quickly soured. On the way down, in the corner of my eye, I saw something crouched in shadow. I froze. Charles froze. A man, ragged, his face smeared with what looked like blood. He moved with an unnatural gait, limping and jerking, but his eyes seemed fixed on us. My stomach turned cold. We ducked behind a snack shack as a security guard passed, heart hammering. The man didn't follow us, but the image burned into my mind. Every rational explanation, homeless, injured, drunk, felt weak against the primal fear twisting my gut. We made it back to our tent without speaking, the night silent except for our ragged breathing. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed the figure over and over, crouching, blood-streaked, limping. I imagined him following us, watching us, waiting. Charles was tense, too, though he tried to mask it with a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. Morning arrived, deceptively calm. Birds chirped, the sun made the campground look safe. Until the announcement. A man had been stabbed to death 4 miles away. The suspect? Described as ragged, possibly shirtless, bloodied. Charles and I shared a glance. We knew what we'd seen. The rest of the trip was surreal. My dad grumbled about the fake wilderness, the amusement park, the rules. But Charles and I couldn't shake the memory of that night. Every shadow, every movement felt loaded with menace. We were lucky, ridiculously lucky, to have seen the figure and survived unscathed. I think about it sometimes. That man, where is he now? Did he continue hunting someone else in the dark? The image of his twisted face, bloodied and staring, is a ghost that refuses to leave. You think you know the city, right? You've walked its streets 100 times, seen the same faces, passed the same corners, until one day, something appears. Something that shouldn't exist. A smile painted in horror. And suddenly, your world isn't safe anymore. This is the story of the day I came face to face with something I can't explain, a clown who turned an ordinary subway ride into a nightmare I will never forget. I was 16, a junior in high school, and I had just survived another grueling day of classes. My backpack weighed a ton. My headphones were blasting music to drown out the chaos of the city, and my mind was somewhere entirely different, probably on weekend plans or trying to cram chemistry facts into my brain. The train car I stepped onto was almost empty, which was unusual but not alarming. I slumped into a seat near the middle, eyes glued to my phone. I was reviewing my chem flashcards, probably failing at it, but at least I was distracted. I didn't notice the man until the train jolted to a stop at 96th Street. That's when I saw him. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved in the doorway. I glanced up, and my heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a normal person. It was a clown, and not a playful birthday party clown, but one that could have been ripped from a nightmare. Rainbow-colored pants baggy enough to hide a small person, a yellow shirt with bright red suspenders, giant red shoes, white face paint smeared and cracked, blue triangles above the eyes, a red nose that glowed under the train lights, and no wig. He just stood there, motionless, blocking my exit. For a second, I froze. My body betrayed me. I wanted to get off the train, to run, but I couldn't move. The clown didn't speak, didn't blink. He just stared. The door started to close, and I snapped out of it. I brushed past him, trying to act natural, trying not to scream. But he moved with a fluid, jerky motion that made my skin crawl. He leaned forward as if to force a confrontation, and my stomach twisted in terror. I ran, sprinting up the station stairs, heart hammering. Each step felt like it might be my last. The platform was eerily empty, the fluorescent lights flickering above me. And the clown, he followed. I didn't look back, not at first. My brain was screaming at me. Run, don't stop, don't let him touch you. My sneakers slapped against the tile, echoing in the empty station, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. And then I glanced over my shoulder. He wasn't just chasing me. He was levitating slightly, almost gliding, but his movements were disjointed. Limbs too long, too angular, stride unnatural. The knife in his hand glinted under the harsh lights. A kitchen knife. A simple kitchen knife, but in his hands, it felt like a weapon from a horror movie, a tool meant for murder. I bolted into the street above. The city felt unreal, almost too quiet, like it had paused just to watch me run. Cars honked in the distance, but nobody noticed me. I reported it to the police immediately. Officers came down to the station, flashlights cutting through the shadows. The clown was gone. No trace, no prints, nothing. Just me, trembling, unable to breathe, feeling like the walls were closing in. The days after were just as haunting. Every shadow on my street seemed like him. Every reflection in a shop window, every stranger's glance, it all felt like a threat. I didn't sleep for nights. My parents tried to reassure me, but they didn't understand. They couldn't. The fear wasn't rational. It was primal. And then, weeks later, the news came. Other sightings, other attacks. The 2016 clown hysteria wasn't all hoaxes. Some were real. Some were terrifyingly real. I wasn't the only one who saw him. And yet, no one could catch him. No one ever explained why. Weeks turned into months, and the city felt smaller. I avoided the trains, avoided the streets near 96th Street, avoided being alone. Friends noticed my paranoia, but I brushed it off. Who would believe me? Who would understand that a clown, a nightmare in human form, was hunting, stalking, waiting? I tried to convince myself it was a one-time thing, that it was just fear and imagination. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen him. I had run from him. And I had survived by a thread. The encounter left scars. Not physical, not visible, but deep in my mind. Every time I hear children laughing, every time I see someone in a costume, every time I step onto a subway, that memory flashes. The clown's face, smeared with white and red, the jerky stride, the knife, it's burned in my memory forever. Even now, years later, I sometimes think I see him out of the corner of my eye. I know it's irrational. I know it's impossible. But the fear is real. That's the thing about horror. Sometimes it's not in the shadows, not in the dark. Sometimes it's in plain sight. And sometimes it's standing right in front of you, smiling, waiting for the moment you least expect. You think taking a quiet, boring job will be safe, right? A little money, some routine, maybe a bit of freedom. I thought the same, until I realized that the smiles around me were masks, that the calm, sparkling water hid shadows darker than night, and that sometimes the danger isn't on the streets, it's right where you work. This is the story of the summer I almost lost my life at the pool. It was 2 years after I finished undergrad, and I had no plan. Literally none. I was trying to earn a few bucks while taking an online graduate certificate. My life was a patchwork of odd jobs, door dashing, babysitting, retail work, and most days I felt like I was just existing rather than living. One night, scrolling through Indeed on my laptop, I stumbled across a listing that caught my eye. A lifeguard position at a hotel a few towns over. Not unusual, except for a few things. The hours were all wrong. 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., essentially a night shift at a pool. The posting explicitly stated they wanted someone who did not speak Spanish. I am half Mexican, grew up speaking Spanish fluently, and lived in a town mostly populated by Spanish speakers. That alone was strange enough to make me pause. But then there was the pay. $30 an hour. For a night shift job, my heart skipped a beat. That was insane money for someone desperate like me. I applied, and within a few hours I got a call. They wanted me in for an interview. The first day felt surreal. I pulled up to the hotel complex. It looked normal, well-kept, almost luxurious. A pudgy, friendly-looking man greeted me. He laughed easily, shook my hand, and made small talk. For a moment, I thought maybe this wasn't going to be so weird after all. Then we met the other guy. Taller, leaner, imposing. He didn't smile. He immediately started speaking to me in Spanish. My stomach twisted. I realized the job posting wasn't a mistake. They were testing me. I played dumb, pretending I didn't understand. The two men exchanged a knowing look and burst into laughter. The tall man introduced himself as Heath, the bigger one as Esteban. The first day ended with instructions. Supervise the pool from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Collect fees from non-guests. If anyone showed a blue wristband, let them into the pool house. No questions, no explanations, just a set of orders. The first week was surprisingly normal. Pool users trickled in, and I handled my duties without incident. But then the wristbands started showing up. One by one, people I didn't know approached me, flashing their bands, and I opened the heavy doors to the pool house for them. At first, nothing seemed strange. People came out hours later with backpacks that were heavier than when they went in. I ignored it. Money flowed in. Tips started showing up. The regular pool goers were oblivious, or at least pretended to be. It didn't take long to realize the truth. I was standing guard over something illegal. Something much bigger than my small role could ever affect. A month in, I saved a child from drowning. It was innocent enough, yet it became the turning point. The father, one of the wristband holders, personally thanked me. Everyone applauded. I felt a strange pride, but it was tainted. Every smile around me, every congratulatory gesture, now carried an undertone of menace. The pool house was clearly a front. The guests, mostly Hispanic men, all wearing blue wristbands, were part of an operation I could only guess at. Drugs? Gambling? Something else? I didn't know. I was too scared to ask. And yet, the money and small perks kept me tethered. I started noticing small details. Conversations in Spanish, snippets I couldn't understand, but enough to feel the tension. bags disappearing and reappearing, heavier than before. Heath and Stabin watching me constantly, sometimes from a distance, sometimes close enough to feel their gaze on my neck. One night, after a particularly busy evening, I took a call from my mother. She spoke only Spanish, so I stepped aside to a private corner to talk. After hanging up, I realized Stabin was standing right in front of me, just staring. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. He didn't smile. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, like he was weighing something in his mind. After what felt like an eternity, he said, "Okay," and walked away. But the message was clear. He knew, and he was deciding what to do about it. The following nights were even more unnerving. Wristband holders began arriving in groups, more daring, more confident. I was collecting money, opening doors, seeing things I wasn't supposed to see. I started sleeping less, obsessed with potential exits, ways to leave unnoticed. And then came the night of the early shift. Heath told me to arrive an hour before my normal start. He hinted at a special opportunity, but gave no details. My stomach churned. I knew that whatever awaited me wasn't going to be benign. I arrived at 4 p.m., the hotel silent, dimly lit. Heath greeted me, calm as ever, but his calmness was more terrifying than anger. He led me past the usual pool area to a door I had never opened. Inside, I saw a scene that made my blood run cold. A room full of money, stacks of bills and boxes. People exchanging envelopes, some with goods I couldn't identify. Security cameras watching every movement, every person. And at the center, a Stabin, orchestrating everything like a conductor of chaos. I realized then the gravity of my situation. I wasn't just a lifeguard. I was a pawn in a criminal operation. Every tip, every compliment, every friendly gesture had been a test, a way to see if I could be trusted or manipulated. I didn't know what to do. Leave now and risk being implicated? Stay and survive another night? My fear was suffocating. The adrenaline kept me alert, but my hands shook constantly. The longer I watched, the more I realized the operation was bigger than I imagined. Drugs were involved, undoubtedly. Money laundering, distribution. This wasn't a pool party. This was organized crime hiding behind hotel facade. And I had been unwittingly complicit. Over the next week, I tried to gather information discreetly. I memorized faces, routines, even camera placements. I learned who the runners were, who delivered what, and how quickly everything moved. I stayed as invisible as possible, careful not to attract attention, but constantly aware of Stabin's gaze. Sleep became impossible. Food tasted bland. Every sound outside my apartment at night made me jump. I felt like I was being watched, even off duty. And then one night it happened. A wristband holder approached me near the pool. He tried to speak English, but I didn't answer. He got closer, tilting his head, studying me. Something about his demeanor was off. Too friendly, too casual. I realized, in horror, that he was testing me. If I failed, there was no telling what would happen. My mind raced. I had to stay calm, had to act natural. I unlocked the pool house door for him, the key cold in my hand, sweat pouring down my face. The door clicked shut behind him, and I exhaled. I hadn't been caught. Not this time. By the end of that summer, I had seen things I can't unsee. Men disappearing through back doors, shipments moving silently, interactions I couldn't decipher. I left the job, unable to continue. The fear was too much, the paranoia too intense. Even now, years later, I replay every moment in my mind. I know I was lucky. I know many others might not have walked away. And I know that the shadow of those nights, the pool house, the wristbands, a stab and stare, will haunt me forever.